Hey, everybody, welcome to this special edition of our podcast. Today, we are talking with my good friend, also church member, church elder, and surgeon, Dr. Ariel Ortiz. But between us, you and me, we can just call him Ariel. He prefers it that way.
Exactly, that's better. Much better.
There's so many things that are circulating around the news and probably around your communities and the people that you do life with about what is factual, what is rumor, what is the news saying, what is the CDC saying, all around, this coronavirus conversation. And my hope for this particular conversation is we bring in somebody, when you know some very educated professionals, you bring them to the conversation because they're a lot smarter than I am. But because your concern and my concern are likely the same, let's have some real conversations with people who are facing this every day. Ariel works on people as a livelihood, and today he's going to share some great stuff concerning what we know today, in particular to San Diego. Now, this is going to be a conversation that's going to serve our church first, our members, our leaders, the people that call Torrey Pines Church home. But if you're a Torrey Pines Church regular, I want to say thank you for letting us kind of widen the scope a little bit, as this conversation is likely going to serve several leaders in other churches also. So, Ariel, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, great. Well, it's a great moment to have this podcast. You were saying you fight fear with?
Facts.
Fighting fear with facts.
Yeah.
So in this case, the facts are there, some of them, and some are not.
Yeah.
And as professionals, it's our obligation to understand which ones are facts and which ones are not, because we have to take action upon the ones we do know, and when we don't know, we just have to wait. And that's the unfortunate fact that's happening right here. But in general, it's important, and no more, I want to say, not a better day to do this than today, when the state of an emergency has been declared in San Diego.
It was very timely that, lots of companies, lots of businesses, sporting organizations have all kind of made their declaration. And churches today, as we approach the weekend, are wondering what's going to be our position, what's going to be our stance. And, before we hit record, I approached my 8-year-old with this same logic, right? That we fight fear, which is something I think all of us, nobody would deny having a sense of uncertainty in this season. But the way we combat fear, Scripture tells us that God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind, right? And so I tell my 8-year-old, listen, we can combat fear with facts. But the question is, for a lot of people, where do you find your facts? And what's a trusted source of information in a season when there is so much coming out so quickly?
Well, there's a lot of media portraying this in various degrees of intensity. A pandemic is basically when it's spread worldwide, and it has. So that's what it means.
Okay.
So pandemic proportions, and just the word scares us all, but that was just declared a couple of days ago. So that means that we're all going to be exposed to it. Now, I can't tell you what's going to happen with this one. We more or less know, scientists know what's going to happen. But if we go back to 2009, a similar outbreak, a viral outbreak, the influenza, the swine flu, which penetrated the whole world. And there were unfortunately many deaths. And it wasn't until the next year where they could design and implement a vaccine, a safe vaccine. And then, well, we're now used to it because everybody knows that they have to get vaccinated because the flu season is coming.
When you read right now, national news versus global news, the numbers seem very minimal in comparison to the action that's being taken. When we think about like the incubation period and all of those things, I know a lot of churches are wondering, it doesn't seem like anybody's sick. I don't know anybody personally that's sick. I hear about it globally. What are some of the things that you're having your clientele do as precautionary measures that you're basing off of some of the facts that you've got in your own hands?
So we have a surgical center, and our patients travel from all across the United States and sometimes from the rest of the world. So we're pre-screening them. Unfortunately, the only thing we can ask them is symptoms. Number one. Number two, and the symptoms are especially fever plus, can't be just fever. It has to be fever plus coughing.
Okay.
Or respiratory distress.
Right. Respiratory distress.
Difficulty breathing. Okay. So if you have symptoms.
And that's it.
And that's, now they're describing symptoms that can be digestive, a couple of cases of diarrhea, etc. But these are the main symptoms we want to look out for, because that is more or less how it starts with fever, and then it has company with those two other symptoms, and now you can say, all right, there's cause for concern. Okay. And that's when you go ahead and test. The other things we're screening for is somebody that traveled recently. Number three, and the places, especially right now, apart from China, which is not usual that people travel to China, but people travel to Italy.
Right.
And Italy has the largest outbreak right now, and it's a huge epidemic.
By percentage.
By percentage, with a very high mortality.
Okay, so let's talk mortality rate just for the average person, because I think of our Torrey Pines family. We've got many generations in our church. I'm sure there are other churches and ministries that have many generations represented, and the mortality is different for each generation. And as we get more information that pertains to us specifically, let's talk mortality and let's talk global, national, and local.
All right. So what we know now is that out of China, the data came out that 80 years old was the average death. But what we know for a fact is that after it spread, 60 years and above is much higher risk. And it's exponential how the older you are, the higher the probability you're going to suffer a very aggressive disease, and you have a higher probability of death by pneumonia, by impact in the lungs. So what the CDC now says, and you were asking which are the sources. You want to look at the CDC and the World Health Organization, but the CDC has a very keen view on, or scope on, American soil, on how diseases behave in the United States and the areas surrounding the United States. So if you have somebody who is older, 60 years and above, if they have some type of disease, usually it's lung disease, heart disease, renal disease, and diabetes. Okay. Now, if I give you diabetes is one of my specialties.
Yes.
5 out of 10 people in the United States are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. So that's a lot of people.
So you're saying that the potential is pretty large in the case of people who could be not just exposed to, but actually have to deal with a pretty severe version of the virus.
Yeah, and we were listening to that today in the report on the San Diego report for the community which is at risk, highest risk for complications and death, is the older person who has some type of chronic disease. And again, like I said, chronic disease is either heart disease, lung disease, smokers, chronic smokers. Yeah. That debilitates you. So if you're watching and you smoke, you're at a very high risk. Yeah. So maybe this is time to stop smoking.
Great season to take advantage of those New Year's resolutions, right? Yeah. 3 months later.